Welcome back. The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, or ICASA, is to announce spectrum licensing plans and the issuance of the two invitations. This is to apply for the wireless open access network as well as the international mobile telephony spectrum. Advocates Dimakatso Qocha, councilor at the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, joins us now. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's first start with the layman. How do we understand these two offerings? What exactly are we talking about here?
Good afternoon to you, Tapiso. Good afternoon to the viewers at home. Indeed, in layman's language, this process is a process that's going to ensure that there is the lowering of the cost of data. It's a process that's going to ensure that there is the availability or the availing of services where ordinarily people do not get access to data services and internet connection and mobile telephony. So basically this process, Tapiso, I think it started in 2019, even maybe earlier than that, when the authority had regard for the policy direction that has been published by the Minister of Comms, Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. And the policy directive basically laid a policy framework within which we should operate as authority. And other considerations that we had regard for was the competition aspect of introducing these services, as well as the reserve price or the analysis of what the real value of the spectrum is. Because you know that spectrum is a finite resource and basically you cannot quantify. But we had to go through that process of ascertaining the value or the worth of the process, of the spectrum. We also published what we called the information memorandum, which was intended to alert interested parties as to the process that's going to unfold. And that was done again last year, November 2019. And again, when we realized the effect of the pandemic, we also then earlier this year, in September this year, then we published a request for information in as far as how the pandemic has affected the way that the business.
Advocate, I want to talk about just your licensing plans and process, how that's going to be outlined, because we know that there has been quite a lot of debate around the regulatory capacity and the sophistication thereof.
Yes, so there are two processes that we're undertaking, and as you rightfully pointed out in your introduction, there is the one which is more an instrument that's going to allow new players from historically disadvantaged backgrounds. So that's more of a landscape for new players. But the one which is the IMT, the auction, which is the auctioning of the IMT spectrum, is intended for the incumbent operators. You're already licensed mobile operators. It's going to allow them to get additional spectrum, which will enable them to be able to avail more enhanced services to what they're already offering. So with the one, as I said, it's going to be a transformation tool. We are expecting the players or the applicants for the one to already come with a 70% South African ownership. We're expecting the empowerment of Black women in particular, the youth, and as well as people with disabilities. So those are the key issues that we're looking at attracting from the one point of view, because it's going to allow new entrants into the market. You
spoke about competitiveness earlier on. How would you then fall back on the already existing spectrum to ensure equity? And of course, you mentioned about bringing in new players in an environment such as this, especially in terms of COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on empowering people and of course allowing people into previously closed off spaces. How are you going to do that to ensure that there is agreement, that there is fair play?
So what we do as the authority when we license, we will already impose what we call license terms and conditions, and it will be through license terms and conditions that will impose obligations that will then be monitored. But I think with regards to, I think you spoke about the clawing back of spectrum. Basically, we are not clawing back. We are availing spectrum to those that are already in possession of spectrum, because I think you'll recall that there also have been concerns about data mass fall and so forth. So I think this process is aimed at ensuring that the cost of data falls. And there are other processes that you're undertaking as authority which are intertwined to this very process. We are undertaking a market study which will go into the inquiry of data pricing.
And the bottom line, I suppose, is good quality spectrum versus lower costs for data that you mentioned. Are there going to be non-negotiables that you're going to include in some of the clauses to make sure that people comply?
I suppose really, Tsepiso, because the outcry from our customers or consumers has always been the price of data. It has been lack of connectivity to rural areas. And I think the speed as well is one of the key areas that we are not going to budge on in as far as the speed of connectivity. And the connectivity should be standard throughout the country. It should not just be concentrated in the metros, but it should be the same throughout the country when we measure. So I think those are the non-negotiables, especially because those are the reasons that the operators have always been given to say, well, we are not able to meet some of these obligations because of the lack of spectrum that we were encountering.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us, Dimakatso Qocha, councillor at the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. And remember, coming up at 7:30, we're going to be speaking to Dimakatso about celebrating Pride Month and why it's important to fly that flag.